everyone, Standpie here with my recap and impressions video for the Nintendo Switch presentation. So after a lot of hype for several months, we finally got to find out more about the Nintendo Switch in an official broadcast event from Tokyo on January 13th, 2017. Now that event was pretty cool because it showed us a lot about what the Nintendo Switch is and what we can expect from it from a hardware, pricing, and release standpoint. So with that said, let's talk a little bit about it. The first thing we learned is the price point is going to be $299 in America, with a release date of March 3rd. So this is not too far off in the future, and to be honest, I think that price sounds pretty fair for the console. When looking at all the different things that it does, I mean, it's a normal console price. It's not too expensive. It's not cheap either, but it's not overpriced. So, with that said, there are a few different things to keep in mind about it. The first to keep note of is that they finally are no longer going with region locking. They are making this system region-free. That's hugely important because it means you can import video games and play games from other countries. I could not be happier about that fact. It's always a nice benefit. Even if you don't use it, it's just a nice benefit to not have to worry about your region copy or whether or not the game that you bought is going to actually work on your system, even if it's for the system. That's always something that was frustrating about Nintendo consoles in the past. Aside from that, we also found out that the console itself is supposedly built up with the DNA of all previous Nintendo consoles. It showed a different generational leap from every single console, starting with the NES, so they went with the Famicom system, and showed having the two controllers on the side, which is akin to what we have now with the Joy-Cons. They also made a note to include mention of the handle on the GameCube. That's honestly hilarious. I was very surprised that they went that far, but even the GameCube handle was supposedly significant in this whole process. So, yeah, it's got little elements of every different console before it, and that's cool too, because it shows iterative development. It's a nice thing to see. Finally, the battery life for the system, they said ranges from 2.5 to 6 hours. So, that's not tremendously awesome. I'm expecting the more intensive games to be under 3-hour battery life, but all things considered, you can take it around the house, maybe take it somewhere quickly. That's not so bad. So the battery life seems fine. From there, they spent a lot of time talking about the Joy-Con controllers, which are the two little side pieces that you use to play all of your games. Now, you can remove them, you can stick them on the side, you can stick them on a little grip pad. There are a lot of different ways to utilize those controllers, but they did a lot of things to showcase what the controllers themselves include. So they have a thing within them called HD Rumble, which basically the example they gave was dropping ice cubes into a glass and knowing when you shake it how many ice cubes are in that glass, and then also the feeling of water being poured into a glass. Now this is a pretty layman example of what tactile feedback feels like, but it was still interesting enough for me to be like, okay, they're making a big enough deal about this Rumble feature for it to be brought up during the presentation. The other thing is that they use a special camera on these. Now this is a motion IR camera. Essentially, it can judge distance in things in front of it, and it'll be used in different ways for the different games you're playing. So that's pretty interesting. With that said, they showcased how it could be used, and I'll talk in a moment about the different games that we saw in relation to it. The next thing that I really want to talk about, and this is the last thing about the console and its services before we get into the games, is the paid online service. Now, for those who are aware, Nintendo has really been the last standing unpaid online service for multiplayer gaming. That finally is coming to an end. That's, of course, nobody wants to be paying for their online, but Nintendo's joined the basically industry standard at this point. So what it actually means is a few different things. So one, we don't know the details of the service beyond it will be the kind of thing you pay monthly for, but also it's going to be doing... It's hard to talk about this part because it's honestly not satisfying. Like I'm not pleased with it. I'm not pleased with what I've heard. So they talked about it very lightly in the presentation, but there is information about it. We don't know the price point, but we do know the following. 1, it's required to play games online. 2, while you're playing online, you have to use an app, like on a smart device, so it's not within the system itself. You have to use an app to set up your lobbies and use party chat, so you might as well be using a phone, right? And 3, you're getting a free game every month from the Nintendo library, but Unlike with Xbox and with Sony, so long as you have your paid subscriptions continuing, you keep the games forever, these games are only in your library for 1 month, and then they get taken away and replaced with a new game. It's kind of like, you know, Nintendo always has done this with their games. You have to buy them again and again and again. You don't get to keep them and transfer. You know, even with them giving you the game for free as part of your service, it's not to keep forever. So that's probably the single most disappointing thing of the presentation, is hearing about the online. But what can you do? Hopefully there will be some feedback that'll help things adjusted more fairly. Because, I mean, honestly, having to use a smart device to connect to online is ridiculous. I don't see why they couldn't be doing it locally on the system. That just seems like such a waste of time and technology to have to deal with doing your matchmaking nonsense on your iPhone. Why? So, moving from there, now we're going to talk about the games. The games, right? So, the whole entire point of a video game console at the end of the day should be the games. The first thing that they did was, when they showed off the Joy-Cons, they also introduced new controller uses and new ways to play with a game called 1-2 Switch. Now for me, it opened off with a Western Quick Draw Duel, which I always like seeing. I love Western stuff. But, with that said, it looks like kind of like a WarioWare kind of experience, where you have the players looking at each other and focused on one another, and that's what they kept really hitting home, is that, you know, the idea is that you are focused on the other player rather than the screen. So that's kind of cool. But, you know, I was excited about 1-2 Switch. Not excited about the fact that it's not bundled with the console. Every Nintendo console for the last 2 generations has come with some kind of game in the box. 1-2 Switch is a separate title, so unlike Wii Sports, we don't get to have a game right off the bat. Unlike Nintendo Land, it's not something that shows you how the hardware works. You have to buy something with it. So 1-2 Switch is a full-price game, from what I can tell, and it's got some cool-looking stuff on it. Like I said, it gives me like a live-action WarioWare vibe. The next thing that they showed off was another new IP called ARMS. So right off the bat, ARMS is something that tells me that the characters are probably going to end up in a Smash Bros. Game in the future. ARMS is an arena fighter where you are standing in a circular ring of sorts, and you use the Joy-Con controllers to throw punches, and they fire out like springs from your arms. So that's how the game works. Basically, you stand and throw your arms, and your fist goes flying off like a rocket punch and then comes back to you. It's a different take on, you know, old school fun boxing games. It's like extended Monkey D. Luffy meets Punch-Out, right? If everybody had stretchy arms. So that's kind of cool. I do look forward to the game. I don't know that I'm ready to pay full price for it. I don't know much about it other than it looks fun, and I'm excited about that. So those are the 2 IPs they showed off, and those are the, you know, the first things we kind of had impressions of why you should play things on the Switch that makes them inherently unique. So after showing off those IPs, they then brought up Splatoon 2. It's a sequel to Splatoon. It looks like more of the same. If you're a fan of Splatoon, it's probably for you. They also showcased a brand new Mario title, Super Mario Odyssey. It looks really interesting and really cool. Mario is running around in the big city. Mario's in different cities and places around the world. It's very different. It feels like they're slightly out of their comfort zone making it like this. I'm looking forward to it. It seems like the core gameplay is going to revolve around Mario's new hat, which has a set of eyes on it. It honestly looks like a Banjo-Kazooie prop to me, but that's just what I'm used to, right? So I think it's a really interesting looking title. Might be worth checking out. We'll see. It does not come out until winter. In fact, Splatoon 2 and Mario are not coming out when the console launches. Splatoon 2 is in summer, Mario's in winter, as I said before. So those are titles that we heard about but won't be happening with the launch. And that is an interesting detail about the system. So let's break it down. It seems like Nintendo finally has things together with third-party support once again. We've seen quite a few studio names come up that are now supporting Nintendo. So that's great news for Nintendo to have third-party support on the platform. With that said, you know, there are quite a few interesting titles that they announced and showcased in the presentation. One such title, Xenoblade 2. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 here in the United States. That's a game by Monolith Soft. Obviously, if you know about Xenoblade Chronicles, you kind of know what to expect. They also announced a new Shin Megami Tensei. They didn't go into any details about it, but it exists. They mentioned the Elder Scrolls Skyrim, right? So people were super hyped about that. Now, I do have an issue with this. They showcased the game in the original Nintendo Switch announcement trailer, but they didn't confirm it until yesterday. Honestly, they had a lot of nerve going to put that game in that initial reveal trailer and not having it confirmed by then. It could have fallen through. That would have been a horrible, horrible mistake for them. Obviously, it worked out in the end. So I just think it was like unnecessary. You know, why even hype it up if it might not have even happened? So either way, you can now take Skyrim outside and see how pretty the real world is or isn't compared to your game. So that's an interesting new thing there too. FIFA is coming. So, you know, people who love EA Sports and games like FIFA, there you go. It's happening. In fact, there's quite a big lineup of games that we can look forward to just in 2017. But as you can see, it's not really the largest in terms of what's readily available now. And, you know, just to go down like a quick list, you know, things like Dragon Ball are coming in, Xenoverse 2, Disgaea 5, Steep, NBA 2K, right? So we've got quite a few games. But honestly, the single most exciting game for me on the entire announcement that was third party was Ultra Street Fighter 2, The Final Challengers. So, like a personal backstory here for a moment. When I was first introduced to Street Fighter, it was by the wonderful people of ScrewAttack.com, right? Represent. And I loved it. It was Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo HD Remix on the Xbox 360. Basically, I took their word for it and picked it up, and I really enjoyed the game, and it got me into Street Fighter, which was super late in the game's life cycle, but I guess not late enough that it was the last entry to be updated for Street Fighter 2. The reasons I'm excited about this are because it's got quite a few cool looking features. So, right off the bat, we have two new characters, right? I think it's Violent Ken and, like, Evil Ryu, who were not originally in the game. And to be honest, the game looks gorgeous. I may have heard 60 frames per second, I'm not positive. But I mean, it's a gorgeous 2D looking game. The sprites have always been pretty, especially with the Turbo HD Remix. So that's an awesome fact. The Joy-Con controllers you each can play, and Capcom actually released a great trailer for it, showcasing just the kind of spirit around Street Fighter 2. The Joy-Con controllers does have, just like the Super Nintendo, L and R, and then two buttons for punching and kicking respectively. And there's one other thing that actually popped up in the Street Fighter trailer that was totally unexpected for me, and that's they had a split second of someone doing a first-person Hadouken. I bet, my theory is that using the Joy-Con controllers, that's going to be like a bonus minigame that they threw in there, where you get to actually do a Hadouken or other moves in training mode. Like, it's just like a sort of like a do the move in like Shadowloo headquarters or something. Practice doing the move or something. I don't know exactly what it is, but honestly, it looked great. So, just for a split second, it got me excited. So yeah, Ultra Street Fighter 2, I'm ready. So another cool thing, they had different people from different studios making appearances, right? They had representatives from this company and that. Sega's rep is, of course, like the creator of Yakuza, so that was cool, and his outfit was awesome. One of my personal favorite developers, just because of his attitude in some of the games he's made, Suda51 came out and showed off Travis Touchdown for the first time in who knows how long. Right, so I'm super glad that Travis is coming back in some form, be it No More Heroes 3 or a completely different thing. Doesn't matter, I'm excited. What's really cool about that is we do get to see where Nintendo could have been, right, if the third-party support had continued the way it was originally. So, the games lineup, it's kind of a mixed bag. We have some really cool games that are coming, and some of them that we can expect within the year, but if we look at when the console's actually coming out, March 3rd, there aren't a lot of games coming out with the console. Honestly, other than for the sake of Nintendo hype, there's no reason to need it aside from a single game, which is what they used to close out the show, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. So they announced that there's like a bundle that you can get for, or rather a collector's edition for Breath of the Wild, and they also showcased that it is launching alongside the system on March 3rd. That said, it's just like the Wii and the GameCube Twilight Princess situation. You don't need a Nintendo Switch to play Breath of the Wild. It's coming out for Wii U, so if you already have it, you don't need the new system. people are probably going to get it for the new system anyway. But it's just the whole situation again. You know, I don't think Zelda alone, Zelda 1-2 Switch, and a few third-party titles, they're not necessarily going to be the, oh man, so glad I bought the Switch day one. You know, yeah, Zelda will maybe hold you over for a little bit, but how long is your Switch going to really be relevant to you until the games really start pouring in? Now, they did say there are over 80 games in development, or around 80 games. That's another kind of gray area, because we do know now, okay, cool, all these games, but when are they coming out? You know, we don't have any kind of release time to expect 80 games. That can mean anything. It can mean years from now. So, you know, take that as you will. So my overall verdict of the presentation is that they did a really good job. I say that because the pre-orders for the system sold out overnight, which is kind of standard for a really big Nintendo hype release. It's worth noting that we don't know how many actual supply versus demand, you know, units there are. We don't know how many. Nintendo's always been one to underdevelop as far as production goes, and then, you know, create artificial demand. I can say that for somebody who's willing to analyze the situation like myself and not buy into the hype completely. I'm able to look at the problems that we've heard, but I also think that it was a pretty good presentation. I think that for the console, I'm really happy that they're doing this. I think it's the right direction for Nintendo's home console library. And I also think it's the right choice as far as the balance between gimmick and gameplay. I think there's a lot to be seen with the controller, both on the motion side, but also just as a traditional controller. It feels right, just from what I've seen. And I am looking forward to getting my hands on it. That said, did I pick it up? Well, the price point's pretty fair. The release date's just around the corner. I pre-ordered it. You know, I pre-ordered it because I want to at least have the option to change my mind. If I decide otherwise, I can always cancel it. But I want to at least have the availability to me to get the game system. With that said, overall, Nintendo did a pretty good job. They had the right people on stage. You get to see some of the different staff that we don't ever really see. The people who did the talking for the majority of the presentation were honestly all new people to me, compared to previous people like, you know, Iwata-san and, you know, everyone else from Nintendo who usually is involved in things like the Nintendo Directs. So, you know, it was like, I feel as though he'd probably be very happy with what his company is doing. And all in all, I think Nintendo did a good job with the Switch. Do I think it's going to be an out-the-door success? I think there will definitely be some initial hype, but depending on when the games come out, we're going to see. The other huge caveat, that online service does not sound super promising. I do not look forward to having to deal with using a smartphone to set up my lobbies. There's, again, why do I need multiple devices to do something that every other system does on the same system? It just seems unnecessary. So, cool, I can use like screenshots and uploads and stuff. That's great. Other systems do that. Something as simple as parties and matchmaking, voice chat. Why do you need another piece of equipment? So, not to end on a completely sour note, I do think that Nintendo has made the right choice to not, you know, disappoint, but actually enrich their console experience and their library. I think that Nintendo's making good moves. I just think the games need to come out, right? Another one I didn't mention, like a deluxe version of Mario Kart 8. It's like the complete version. And it also added the new characters like the Inklings, so, you know, there's stuff out there. There's stuff to do this year, 2017, that you can expect. But again, I want to see more games because launch lineups do mean a lot for a game's success, and having 5 games ready day one is not enough. With that said, I am the Manly Stanley Standpie. Thank you so much for joining me in this video and listening, and of course, please let me know what you thought, what you think of the video, what you think of the Switch, the games. Just let me hear from you. Leave the opinions in the comments. I'd love to read them. And as always, thank you very much for supporting me and watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it.